My name is David, and I'm part of the team here at MyWorks Software. Today I'll be showing you how to set up our WooCommerce sync for QuickBooks Online. The setup process is quite simple, and by the end of it, your WooCommerce and QuickBooks will be completely in sync, and you'll be able to sync your WooCommerce orders, customers, products, inventory, and more with QuickBooks in real time. As a reminder, everything I'll review here in the video is already available on our documentation site. You can also review these documentation articles for the same step-by-step instructions you'll see here today to get your sync all set up, as well as some additional best practices and documentation on other features of our sync. We also include a complimentary setup call or screen share with all of our paid plans, so you can schedule that within your account with us if you'd like extra help with setup, or if you just have questions. We'll get started by reviewing our Before You Install doc. This breaks down the very basic requirements you'll need to have before getting set up, which is simply an active WooCommerce store and an active QuickBooks Online company with admin access. You'll notice we also include a couple commonly pre-asked setup questions here below. The most common one of these is regarding your products, about where they should be set up. The great thing about our sync is that this is very flexible. If all of your products are in WooCommerce, that's great. You'll be able to sync them to QuickBooks if you'd like, right through our sync. If all of your products are in QuickBooks, that's fine as well. You'll be able to pull them into WooCommerce through our sync as well. If you're just getting started setting up both WooCommerce and QuickBooks, that's fine also. You can add your products in WooCommerce or in QuickBooks, and we can automatically sync them to either platform. You'll be able to configure this in our automatic sync settings as well. You'll notice we also include a couple other questions about banking, taxes, and team and access you'll want to review as well. Now that we're ready to get started, we'll review our initial setup and configuration documentation. This doc article is going to cover what we're going to review on our video today. So if you'd like step-by-step instructions, or if you'd prefer to just read our documentation article, this is the one you can review. Let's get started with the first step. That will be installing our helper plugin on your site. The first thing you'll do is go to Plugins on the left of your WooCommerce admin and click Add New. Then in the top right, you'll search for MyWorks QuickBooks, and you'll see our helper plugin show up. You'll click Install Now and click Activate to activate it. Now you'll see a new tab in the top left of your WooCommerce admin called MyWorks Sync. This is where you'll be able to configure our sync, connect to QuickBooks, set any settings and mappings, and control how our sync works. It's all very conveniently placed right inside of your WooCommerce admin. So the first thing we'll do is go to our connection menu. At this point, you'll want to make sure that you've already signed up for an account with us, either a free or a paid plan. You'll also want to make sure you've signed up for the correct plan based on the version of QuickBooks that you have. This setup video is for our QuickBooks Online sync, but we also support QuickBooks Desktop and POS, and we have separate videos for those as well. So make sure you've already signed up for an account, and we can then continue. Inside your account with us, you'll be able to get a license key. That would also be emailed to you as well after you sign up. So we'll switch to your account with us, click on the Plans menu in the top, click on your plan with us, and you'll see here on the top your license key. We'll go ahead and copy that in and click Enter. Now that the license is activated, you'll see a few other steps here on the page. We'll click Connect here to bring your account with us up again, and we'll scroll down to the bottom of your plan to the QuickBooks Connection section. Here, you'll be able to connect to QuickBooks. Once you click this green Connect to QuickBooks button, it will ask you to sign into QuickBooks and choose your company. Once you've connected, it will look like this. All you have to do here is copy this access token, and we'll switch back to our connection menu in your WooCommerce admin. Here in the last step, we'll paste your access token in and click Save. Once you've entered in your access token and saved, the page will reload, and you should see that you're connected to QuickBooks here at the bottom. Also in the top, you'll see that you're both connected to QuickBooks, and the second step of saving your default settings may already be filled out. This is because we automatically set a few defaults for you. Let's move to the settings menu on the left to take a look at them. Here on the settings page, you'll see we break our settings out into a few different tabs. For right now, we'll review the default settings here because these are the only required settings in our settings panel. You can see we may have already preset a few accounts for you here. We'll automatically create a product in your QuickBooks called Default for Unmatched Products. And this is only used when we're syncing an order into QuickBooks that contains a WooCommerce product that is not mapped to a QuickBooks product. So as long as all of your products are mapped to a QuickBooks product, which we'll review here in the next step, this setting would never be used, but we just set it as a fallback in that event. The rest of these settings are default QuickBooks accounts for new products. These are only used if we're syncing new products into QuickBooks for you from WooCommerce. There's a default sales account, a default inventory asset account, and a default cost of goods account. Normally they'll already be preset, but if they're not, you can simply set them here on the right. These lists are a list of your QuickBooks chart of accounts, so you just choose an appropriate income account, other current asset account, and cost of goods sold account. Once these have been set, you can go ahead and hit save. Now we'll move into the next step of your mappings. We'll click the map menu here on the left under MyWorks Sync, and that'll bring us to our map dashboard. We'll see a few different types of data across the top, like customer, product, payment method. If you have default sales tax set up in QuickBooks, you'll see the tax rate menu here. If you have the new QuickBooks tax called automated sales tax, you won't see the tax rate mapping here because we handle that automatically for you. So no need to worry if you don't see tax rate. Let's go ahead and jump into our customer mapping menu here. This will show you a list of all of your WooCommerce customers and allow you to map them to your QuickBooks customers. Here on the left, you can see a list of all of your WooCommerce customers. Here on the right, you'll see a list of all of your QuickBooks customers here in the dropdown. If you don't see your QuickBooks customers, or you aren't seeing some that you may know that may be in QuickBooks, you can use the Refresh QuickBooks Customers button at any time to make sure that this list is up to date. Also, as a quick reminder, if you're seeing that you may be missing some WooCommerce customers here on the left, that may be because you're using custom roles in QuickBooks or in WooCommerce. You can always verify this by going to the All Users tab here in WooCommerce. If you have different roles here on the top, like custom roles of wholesale, etc., you can easily set those in our sync to be recognized because by default, we'll only recognize customers in the customer role. You can easily do that by going to MyWorks Sync, clicking into the settings menu, and then going to the mapping menu on the top of the page. Here in mapping, we'll see at the bottom we can set a setting to recognize other WordPress roles as a customer. Here you'd select your custom role and click Save. Now back to our customer mappings. The only requirement that we have for mapping your customers during setup is that any customers that exist in both WooCommerce and QuickBooks should simply be mapped together. If you have customers that just exist in WooCommerce or customers that just exist in QuickBooks, those wouldn't need to be mapped and you can leave those alone. That's because any new orders that we sync into QuickBooks for you will automatically sync a customer into QuickBooks if needed. And when we do that, we'll always automatically map that customer here on this page. So to summarize, the only requirement here during setup is simply to map any customers that are already in both WooCommerce and QuickBooks. There's a couple different ways we can do that. First, we can manually choose a match here by clicking the drop-down, searching for the customer, and clicking on it. This is easy to do if you have a few customers, but it can be quite a pain if you have quite a few customers in either WooCommerce or QuickBooks. So we have a few different ways that you can set these. You'll notice our Auto Map Customers button here in the top. This is a tool that lets you automatically match together any customers that are already in WooCommerce and QuickBooks if they have a matching field. This field could be an email address, a display name, a first and last name, just a last name, or even a company name. So let's try mapping them by email address. We'll choose email address in both these fields and click Auto Map. Once the page loads, we can see it's picked up 2 customers for us, Jason and Jenna. This is because they had matching email addresses in both their WooCommerce and QuickBooks customer accounts. Now we could try mapping by just last name, for example. We'll click the last name field in both of these options, and this time we'll click the box that says only apply to unmapped customers so we don't disrupt Jason and Jenna's mapping. If we clicked Auto Map, it would run a scan through just the unmapped customers here, and if it finds any customers with just a last name matching, it would match those together. We could also try a mapping by company name or by even first and last name combined. It really is up to you depending on who your existing customers are in both WooCommerce and QuickBooks and if they share any matching fields. And just as a recap or a summary, we only need to match together any customers that are in both WooCommerce and QuickBooks, as any new customers will be synced into QuickBooks as we sync an order into QuickBooks. Now that we've set our mappings, let's go ahead and move on to the product mappings. We'll click the product menu here in the top of the page, and that'll bring us to our product mappings tab. Mappings look very much like our customer mappings. If we scroll down here on this page, we'll see a list of our WooCommerce products on the left and a drop down of our QuickBooks products here on the right. If our WooCommerce products have a SKU, we'll also see that here in the column in the middle. Although we recommend having unique SKUs in both WooCommerce and QuickBooks, it's not required. You're perfectly fine having no SKUs or simply having some of your products have a SKU due to how flexible our mappings are. So the purpose of this page is to map your WooCommerce products to your QuickBooks products. There's 2 reasons you want to make sure your products and variations are mapped together. Firstly, that ensures that when we sync an order from WooCommerce into QuickBooks, that the correct products are in the line item in the order in QuickBooks. Secondly, if you turn our inventory sync on, that ensures that we're syncing inventory levels correctly for you between both of the products. Let's go ahead and try mapping a few of these products together. There's a few different ways we can do it. First, we can click in this drop down of our QuickBooks products, search or scroll to the correct product, and choose it here to match it together. Then we click Save in the bottom. There's also an automatic way to match your products together as well, if they have the same name or the same SKU. Let's click to the Automatic Products button here in the top. We'll choose SKU in both fields and click Auto Map. What this will do is scan your WooCommerce and QuickBooks products, and if there's any products with a matching SKU, it will automatically match them together on this page. This makes it easy to match many products together without having to review them one by one. As you can see here, it matched 2 of them together for us. One note here is that mapping is only for products that you already have in both WooCommerce and QuickBooks. If you have products that are just in WooCommerce or just in QuickBooks, you can visit our Push menu here on the left to push them from WooCommerce into QuickBooks. Let's try mapping a few more individually. For example, MyWorks socks. We can choose a matching product here in QuickBooks. The name doesn't have to exactly match, nor does the SKU. We can just select it here in the drop-down and click Save. Once all of your products are mapped together, go ahead and click Save. One quick note here is that you do want to make sure that all of your existing products in both systems are mapped together before you try pushing products from WooCommerce to QuickBooks. This will ensure that we can let you know which products are already mapped together and easily indicate which products have not been pushed to QuickBooks so you can easily sync them into QuickBooks. You'll notice here on this page, we're only showing you your simple products. If you have bundled or group products, you'll see those here as well. But if you have variable products, you'll be able to visit this Variations tab here on the top to manage the mappings for those variations individually. If you don't manage variable products or variations in WooCommerce, you can skip this step. Here in the Variations tab, you'll see the same type of layout, a list of your variations here on the left, and the drop-down of QuickBooks products on the right. This is because QuickBooks doesn't actually support variable or variation products, so you'll be able to map each of your variations in WooCommerce to a single product in QuickBooks. Or, if your variations don't yet exist in QuickBooks, you'll be able to push them into QuickBooks through our Push tab here on the left. But first, let's make sure that any variations that are already in QuickBooks are mapped together. You can see if some of them have a skew. If they don't, you would want to manually match them to a QuickBooks product. Let's scroll up to the top, click Auto Map Variations, and try matching them together by skew. Here, after it reloads, we can see it's matched a few of them together for us. That's because they had matching skews in both WooCommerce and QuickBooks. Now that our product mappings are finished, we're all set to go. This ensures that existing products have been mapped together, and this will easily let us know when we're pushing products or variations, which ones are already in QuickBooks, and which ones need to be pushed. Now let's go ahead and move on to the payment method menu. Before we go there, one quick note. If you add new products in QuickBooks manually, you can always get them to show in this drop-down here by clicking the Refresh QuickBooks Products button here. Moving on to payment method mappings. This is the last final step of setup, and this will ensure that when we sync an order into QuickBooks, we're correctly depositing the payment for you into the correct QuickBooks bank account. This keeps reconciling nice and easy and lets us do all of the hard work for you. Here on this page, you'll see a few different sections. There'll be one section for each gateway that you have active in WooCommerce. So for example, in this demo store, we have cash on delivery, PayPal, and Stripe enabled. But on your store, you'll see one section for each gateway that you have activated. It may be one, it may be a few like this, and that's perfectly normal. So what we'll do is click the Enable Payment Syncing switch and go ahead and choose a QuickBooks Online payment method and bank account that will be associated with this gateway in WooCommerce. That ensures that when we're syncing an order into QuickBooks, like an order paid by PayPal, for example, that we're correctly associating with a payment method and a bank account in QuickBooks. So for example, let's go ahead and choose a payment method, which is just a label, so we can choose anything we'd like here. This list can be added or edited or changed in your QuickBooks account. And we'll also choose a bank account as well. Here you choose the bank account that this payment is deposited to in real life. We normally won't need to set a payment method mapping for quote-unquote fake gateways like this cash on delivery, bank transfer, etc. If an actual payment isn't being made in WooCommerce, this is normally something you wouldn't need to set because we're intelligent enough to see if a payment's actually made in WooCommerce, which we would then sync into QuickBooks for you. Let's go ahead and configure the final payment mapping for our credit card or Stripe gateway here. We'll turn on the Enable Payment Syncing box, choose a payment method in QuickBooks, and choose a bank account as well. Now, one of the great gateway support features that we have is called batch support. This is intelligent bank deposit support that's built for credit card gateways like Stripe, Authorize.net, or any gateway or card processor that batches your sales over the course of a day and dumps them into your bank account in one batch a few days later. This can sometimes be tricky to match to sales in QuickBooks because you have one bank deposit in your physical bank account that you have to match to 10, 20, or more orders over the course of that day. But our automatic batch support takes care of all of that for you. The way it handles this is by syncing orders into QuickBooks in real time as they're placed in WooCommerce, but then at the end of the day, automatically creating a bank deposit in QuickBooks that batches all of these orders and groups them all together, deducts any transaction fees if applicable, like for Stripe, and dumps it into your actual bank account that you choose here, so that a few days later in QuickBooks, when your physical bank pulls that transaction that your credit card processor made into your bank account into QuickBooks, you'll simply be able to match it to the bank deposit that we created in QuickBooks a few days earlier. This makes it super easy to reconcile. Let's go ahead and turn that on for our Stripe gateway. We'll scroll to the top here and click Show Advanced Options, then scroll back down to Stripe. You'll see a few more options on this page now. We can turn on Enable Refund Syncing. That ensures that if you issue a refund in WooCommerce for this gateway, we'll sync that into QuickBooks as a refund receipt. We can also turn on Transaction Fee Syncing and associate it with a QuickBooks Online bank account, which would normally be an expense account like bank charges, credit card processing fees, etc. As a small note, you only need to turn on transaction fee syncing if your gateway or payment gateway deducts fees out of the transactions as soon as they occur. For example, Stripe. If you're managing this for your PayPal or maybe an authorized.net account, this is normally something you wouldn't need to turn on. As for PayPal, you can easily record those fees right inside your banking feed in QuickBooks. And for gateways like authorized.net, they may send you an actual bill at the end of the month for your transaction fees, instead of taking it out of your daily deposits. So if this is the case, you wouldn't need to enable transaction fee syncing. You can also enable transaction fee refund syncing. This is if your processor issues a refund of transaction fees to you when you issue a refund. And we can turn on batch support. This is that setting that automatically creates a bank deposit in QuickBooks for you at the end of each day and groups all those payments for the day together and puts them into your actual bank account that you choose here. We'll go ahead and choose the daily batch deposit time. This sets when the actual time that we'll create that bank deposit in QuickBooks for you. For most processors, this is 00 UTC, which is about 6 p.m. Central Time. You'll want to check with your payment gateway or your card processor to determine what time this actually is. But for Stripe, this is 00 UTC. We'll choose the batch payment holding account. This is where the payments are synced in when we sync the order and payment into QuickBooks in real time during the course of your day. This is always going to be called your undeposited funds account. This is an account that's normally already in QuickBooks, and it acts as a holding account over the course of the day to hold funds that you've received but actually haven't been deposited into your bank account yet. We'll also choose a transaction fees vendor. This would be called Stripe, authorized.net, etc. Just simply a vendor in your QuickBooks account. If it's not already created, go ahead and jump into QuickBooks to create it, and then you can select it here. We'll turn on the option, if this is a Stripe gateway, to combine weekend payments in Monday's batch. Normally you only have to turn this on if it's Stripe, and that's simply because Stripe doesn't batch your sales on Saturdays and Sundays. It just gives you one big batch on Monday that's a combination of all of Saturdays, Sundays, and Monday sales. So we reflect this in the bank deposit that we sync into QuickBooks for you. Terms mapping is optional. This is only if you'd like to assign terms to an order when we sync it into QuickBooks for you. Let's go ahead and hit save. Now that this is saved, this is the last final step of the required steps of setting up our sync. You'll notice once this page reloads that the setup menu is gone from the top of your WooCommerce admin. At this point, any new orders, customers, orders, or payments will be automatically synced to QuickBooks for you. You can enable this and control this in our settings here in a moment, and we'll visit here in a moment how to do that. But once this page finishes loading, you'll see that setup menu is gone from the top. Here at this point, we're finished with your mappings. The only thing you can check is if you see a tax rate menu here and you do charge taxes in WooCommerce, you can go ahead and map your tax rates here. Again, as a reminder, if you don't see a tax rate menu here, this is simply because you either don't charge taxes in WooCommerce or because you have automated sales tax set up in QuickBooks, in which case we'll automatically handle all of your tax mappings for you. So there's nothing you need to do. If you have tax rates in WooCommerce, you'll see them here on this page, and you would simply map them to the appropriate QuickBooks tax rate. If you don't have a tax rate set up in QuickBooks for the tax rate you have in WooCommerce, now would be the right time to jump into QuickBooks, create those, and come back to this page to select them here. You would just want to make sure they match the rate that shows here in this row. Now that we've finished your tax mappings, let's go ahead and jump back into our settings. We'll set a few other settings that can control a few different things about how our sync works, and then we can test syncing a few orders and showing you how new orders will sync into QuickBooks. Here in the settings menu, you'll remember the default tab we reviewed earlier in this video. But for now, let's go ahead and jump into the automatic sync menu here on the right. You'll see that there's two different sections here on this page. The top section is WooCommerce to QuickBooks. The bottom section is the opposite direction, QuickBooks to WooCommerce. This is where you can control what new data automatically syncs between each platform. For example, you'll see we've already turned on customer order and payment for you by default. This means that from this point forward, any new customers, orders, or payments that are created in WooCommerce will automatically sync into QuickBooks for you. The rest of these switches are off by default, but it's very easy to turn these on. For example, if we want new products or variations that have been created in WooCommerce to sync into QuickBooks when we create them, we can turn these switches on. As a reminder, these switches only apply to new data. So this means that any existing products or any existing customers and orders in WooCommerce will not be automatically synced into QuickBooks. This is to preserve the integrity of your data in QuickBooks. However, it's very easy to push these into QuickBooks manually through our sync if you'd like to. Another setting that's very popular to turn on is our inventory sync from QuickBooks into WooCommerce. If this tab is turned on, this will keep your WooCommerce inventory up to date with any changes made in QuickBooks. For example, if you make a manual or phone order in QuickBooks, or you receive or to reduce any inventory in QuickBooks, that inventory will automatically sync back into your WooCommerce store. This is the most common setup to have. Normally the inventory switch here in the WooCommerce to QuickBooks section can be turned off because we already automatically sync inventory changes to QuickBooks that have been made by orders in WooCommerce. So for example, if an order is placed for a product and it goes down from 3 to 2, once we sync that order into QuickBooks, the QuickBooks inventory will be reduced from 3 to 2 as well. The only reason to turn this inventory switch here on is if you're manually changing inventory in WooCommerce, say for example from 5 to 3, and you would like that manual inventory change to sync into QuickBooks. Otherwise, you're perfectly fine leaving it off. One important setting we can also set is your order menu. Now there's a lot of settings on this page, but they're already set by default. They're only optional settings that allow you to change different ways about how our sync works. The important setting here on this page is the top one, where you can choose how to sync WooCommerce orders into QuickBooks. You'll see by default it's set to sales receipt, but if you'd like us to sync orders into QuickBooks as an invoice and a payment, if a payment was actually made in WooCommerce, you can switch this to invoice. It's up to you. Our default is sales receipt simply because that's the most common way WooCommerce orders are made. Normally, if a WooCommerce order is placed, it's already paid in your checkout, either by a credit card or PayPal gateway, in which case it's most efficient to sync it into QuickBooks as a sales receipt, which is recording both that order and the payment that you received at the same time. Now, let's go ahead and review a few things about our WooCommerce integration, how we're deeply integrated into WooCommerce, and even test pushing over an order into QuickBooks. If we visit WooCommerce here on the left, this will take a look at our WooCommerce orders on this page. You'll notice that we add a column here on the right called Sync Status. This lets you very easily see if we've synced that order into QuickBooks or not. If you're just getting started to set up our sync, you'll mostly see that all of the labels here on the right say not synced. And that's normal because we won't automatically sync existing orders into QuickBooks for you, only new orders. Here in this tab, a few shows synced because we've already synced or pushed them into QuickBooks. If we click on this little green sync tab, this will bring us to the actual order in QuickBooks. Now let's go to MyWorks Sync here in the top left and go to the push menu. This will allow us to push existing WooCommerce data into QuickBooks. Here in the top, we'll see a few different tabs like Customer, Order, Product, and Inventory. Normally, you won't have to push customers into QuickBooks because, as we mentioned earlier in our mappings, we automatically sync new customers into QuickBooks as needed as we sync the related order into QuickBooks. So let's go to the Product menu first and try pushing over a couple products because we mapped a few of them, but a few of them are still not mapped. Here in the Product Push tab, we'll see again a list of our WooCommerce products here on the left. And over here on the right, you can see a red X or a green check mark based on if that product's mapped to a QuickBooks product. You can see the two products we mapped earlier show here with green check marks, which is why you want to make sure you map any existing products before coming into this push page to push them into QuickBooks, as this will easily show you which products are mapped to QuickBooks and which ones are not. So for example, let's try pushing MyWorks socks into QuickBooks. We'll check the box here on the left and click Push Selected Products. This will give us a little progress window that we can track the status of how many products we're pushing into QuickBooks. Once that reaches 100%, we can click Close. Now if we went into QuickBooks, we'd see that that product exists. And if we reload this page, we'll see a green check mark next to the MyWorks Socks product, showing that it now exists in QuickBooks. As a reminder, any new products that you push, either through the push page or if we automatically sync them into QuickBooks, will be automatically mapped, so there's nothing you need to do. Let's try pushing a variation as well. On the variation push page, again, we'll see over here on the right, any green check marks for variations that we've already mapped to QuickBooks, which will easily tell us if there's any variations that we have not mapped. Let's try pushing this coffee mug white variation into QuickBooks. We'd select the checkbox here and hit push selected variations. One important note to note is that the way that we determine when we sync a product into QuickBooks, whether it should be an inventory product or a non-inventory product in QuickBooks, is based on the Manage Stock option in WooCommerce. For example, for some of these variations, like these sunglasses, these top two sunglasses, you can see we're not managing stock in QuickBooks for them. This means that we're going to push this product into QuickBooks as a non-inventory product. However, the sunglasses small product here, you can see we are managing inventory for it in WooCommerce. This means if we push this into QuickBooks, it would be created as an inventory product in QuickBooks. This is important to note and review before you decide to push products into QuickBooks, as you'll want to make sure that your managed stock is correctly set as desired in WooCommerce so that we can sync the products correctly into QuickBooks for you. Now that we've pushed your products, let's try pushing an order. We'll go to the order menu here on the top. It shows you a list of all of your orders in WooCommerce and is a great way to catch up on pushing historical orders into QuickBooks if you need to catch up on your accounting. You can see a list of all of your orders here. You'll see the order ID here on the left. You can filter them or search by name, filter by date, or even filter by your order status. Let's go ahead and test pushing an order into QuickBooks. We'll check the box here on the left and click the Push Selected Orders button here in the top. Again, we'll get this status or progress window, and once it reaches 100%, we can go ahead and close it. Now that that order is pushed, if we reload the page, we'll see that there's a green check mark to the right of it. This lets us easily see the status of all of our existing orders and push them into QuickBooks if we'd like. As a reminder, we'll never automatically sync old orders into QuickBooks unless you push them here from this page or you edit something about them and save the order. That would trigger us to sync the order into QuickBooks. Because if an order is ever updated in WooCommerce, we'll always sync that updated order into QuickBooks for you. If that order exists in QuickBooks already, that our sync is already synced in, we'll always update the order in QuickBooks and we'd never duplicate it. That takes care of our example of pushing orders. Now, if we go back to the WooCommerce orders page, we'll see a list of our WooCommerce orders, and now this order shows it has been synced. Great job, you finished your setup. Now that your setup is complete and orders are syncing through, you're all finished. We recommend you review our documentation to answer any additional questions you may have, and you can always open a ticket with our 24/7 support team with any follow-up questions as well. Thanks for watching and happy syncing.